See that? That's the Schrade Old Timer Splinter 6-in-1 carving tool. That's right, you can count them. 1, 2, the rest. And the question on everyone's mind is, for only $20 or so, is this thing any good? And that's the question I'm going to answer for you today. Let's go ahead and start with a little bit of a spoiler alert though. The verdict is, it's okay. For a little more detail, why don't you stick around? I'm going to switch over to voiceover Grant because he is much better at this than I am.
Thanks, in-person Grant. Let's talk about the Schrade Old Timer Splinter 6-in-1 pocket carving knife in a little more detail. Its 6 non-locking blades are made of Chinese carbon steel with a black coating, and when folded it measures 4.375 inches. But let's get into what each one of those blades does a little differently. First up is tool number 1, the straight gouge. Now, as you might have guessed, this one's used for gouging straight lines into wood. Let's give it a try. Well, as you can see, this wasn't the easiest thing to do, but it could have been worse. Tool number 2 is the V-Scorp blade. Now this one's obviously designed to take out bigger chunks of wood, and its angled position is supposed to make it a little bit easier to pull towards you. But as you can see, it wasn't all that easy. Up next we have tool number 3, the hook blade. Now this one's used to dig out the concave sides of spoons or just any other large swaths of wood that you need to get rid of. If it were a little bit sharper, that would probably be a lot easier, but I'm also not a spoon maker, so maybe my technique could use some work. Tool number 4 is the 1.5 inch detail blade. Now this is the one that most of us will probably use most often. Now, although the knife feels fine in your hand, digging even into a small piece of basswood proved to be pretty difficult given how dull the knife is out of the box. Next up we have tool number 5, the V-Scorp blade. Now I will say I was excited to use this one given the type of carving I normally like to do, and I will also say that it felt great in my hand and I like the angled aspect, though again, it needed sharpening before it could be of any real use. Finally we have tool number 6, the chisel blade. Now this one, just like every other tool, needed a little bit of sharpening, but that wasn't the only thing that made it difficult to use. As you can see, there's a lot of flex when pushing down, and that didn't give me a lot of confidence. So overall, when all the blades are folded in, it's got a good weight to it. It feels sturdy, well made. I can imagine it lasting a good long time. All of the blades fit in there really nicely, so I could see myself throwing this in my pocket and just sitting around the campfire maybe, whittling something or carving something, provided those blades get sharpened, of course. Now, one issue that a lot of people have with folding pocket knives like these is that it's pretty tough to actually get the blades out. As you can see, I had no such issue with the old timer. Every blade just came out really easily, and I was also never in too much fear of the blade closing on me when I was using it. Although with some of them, like the chisel, a locking mechanism would have been really nice. But again, the knife is only $20 or so. Alright, so let's go ahead and compare this to another type of knife. As you can see, the first cut I'm making here, it's not going so well. The cut is very jagged, it just broke off at the end near the top, and a lot sharper knife, like this simple, relatively inexpensive beavercraft knife, well, let's just see how it does. Now as you can see, that is a pretty clean cut. Compared to the one the old timer made, the difference is pretty obvious. Now of course, that's just sharpness as it comes out of the box. The beavercraft does a great job of that, but the old timer clearly does not. I wonder if we can go ahead and sharpen this up, if it will perform better. Now sadly, because old timer used a type of steel that only has a Rockwell hardness of about 53, you probably will find yourself sharpening these tools pretty often to keep that edge.
Alright, so I just got done running it over a stone a few times and then stropping it as well. Let's see how much better it cuts than before. So before, I was having some real trouble pushing it through, and it was creating a really uneven cut. Let's see. Alright, so as you can see, that's much smoother. It was still tough to push through, so it needs some more work still. But let's compare it to this old camping knife that I had lying around. and see how much better that is. Well, maybe I've been using the wrong knives all along. So, the Schrade Old-Timer Splinter. What's the final verdict? Well, as I alluded to in my previous spoiler alert. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and jump in here because I clearly wasn't sure how to end that sentence. But the bottom line is that, honestly, this knife is pretty good for the price. But again, you do have to filter it all through how much it costs. And for $20, it's hard to beat. So I thought I'd go ahead and carve out a simple wooden spirit, if you will, one of the most common types of carving you can do, and just see how it performs. Now again, I could have used some more time sharpening it, but overall it did a pretty good job. It feels good in the hand, there's nothing sticking out, gouging my skin, making it difficult, and so I can't really complain there. Now one thing I didn't think I would really care about is the lack of the locking blades. It's not really a problem when you're using the knife like I am here because I didn't have any issues with it coming towards my fingers or anything like that. There is a slight issue if you're using it like a chisel, or in some cases the V-Gouge, for example, because of the way you use those, it's just a little more natural for it to move side to side, and without the locking mechanism it can be a little bit dangerous. Now, speaking of dangerous, the fact that this comes out of the box so dull is a real problem. There were several times during even just this carving, after I'd sharpened it a little bit, that the knife tended to kind of glide across the wood, and instead of digging in like I thought that it should, that made it a little more dangerous because it started to get a little out of control at times. Now, you can adjust your technique to compensate for that, but I just wish it was sharper. And unless you're kind of an expert at sharpening, or at least you have a lot of experience, sharpening tiny little tools like this is going to be difficult, and you need special tools to do some of these. So on the pro side, you have the fact that it's very inexpensive. On the con side, you have the fact that you're going to need to put in some work in order to get it as sharp as you need it to be, and the fact that it could be a little bit higher quality, but again, for the price point, it's really hard to beat. Alright, so as you can see, I was able to carve the traditional 5-minute wizard in just a little over 11 minutes, so that's pretty good. Alright, so that pretty much wraps things up. I hope you guys found this review helpful. If not, I don't know what to tell you. If you did, I'd really appreciate it if you would like, subscribe, do whatever you want to the video. I'm not trying to tell you how to live your life, but if you did subscribe, it would help me out a lot, so I'd appreciate it. Until the next time.